Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Shutaba Sinha, Associate Professor in the Department of Islamic History and Culture, University of Calcutta. And today we are going to discuss about a model which is under the paper entitled Indian Polity, and the title of the module is Delhi Sultanate and the Balban's Theory of Kingship. So basically till now I think that you have already studied about the Indian polity during the period of pre-Islamic period, if we say, that is before the coming of Islam. And before that, we just like to have an idea that what are the learning objectives of this present module: to study the concept of Iranian and Persian theory of kingship, historians' view about Balban's idea of kingship, who Balban's initiated this theory of kingship in the Delhi Sultanate, and how he has initiated the theory in case of India, measures in implementing his theory of kingship that he has taken, and the special features of the particular theory of kingship that was introduced by Balban in India, and his contribution in the consolidation of Delhi Sultanate. So, with a very brief introduction to the initiation of Delhi Sultanate, like Khosrow Malik, who was the last Ghaznavi prince of Lahore, was overthrown in 1187 AD by Muhammad bin Sam of Ghur. So, in 1192, just after 5 years, he defeated the Hindu ruler Prithviraj, the Chauhan ruler of Sambhar, at the Battle of Tarauri. This victory opened the entire North India to Muhammad bin Sam, and the beginning of the first Muslim dynasty of India came into existence. Muhammad Ghuri appointed Kutubuddin Aibak, one of his army general, as his viceroy in the newly conquered area, and at the end of 1192, Aibak marched towards Delhi, captured it from the Rajputs, and made it his headquarters, and that is how Delhi started to be the imperial headquarters or the capital of the Sultanate period of Delhi, which continued for next 300 years or so in India. They held their sway over India for next 3 centuries, as we have already mentioned, and commonly we term this period as Delhi Sultanate. To begin with Delhi Sultanate, we know that it was Kutubuddin Aibak, but then we find the Mamluks dynasty and Mamluk rulers, and when Delhi became a bit went into a difficult condition, Balban came to the throne. His accession to the throne happened in 1266 AD, and which provided Delhi Sultanate with a very powerful and determined ruler. Balban was a despotic ruler, and the re-establishment of the prestige of the crown was immediate need for him. He strengthened absolute monarchy by suppressing all his opposition. He tried to create a halo of superiority around him and declared himself a descendant of Afrasiab dynasty of Iran. During his long tenure of the Hibayat, he completely broke the Samshi party and restored the crown's power. He used the Turkish immigration, creating a broader basis for the state. Now, after with this introduction, we may now discuss about the view of different historians. First, we will mention about the contemporary historians like Ziauddin Barani, and then we will learn about the opinion of the historians of the modern days. So, Balban was probably the only Sultan of Delhi who is reported to have discussed his views about his kingship with his sons Muhammad Khan and Bughra Khan, as known from Ziauddin Barani's account Tarikh-i-Firoz Shahi. Historians have had reasons for doubting the veracity of this, because the dialogues exchanged between them are in effect nothing beyond Barani's own views, as it generally happened during those days. In modern day, Peter Hardy, in his famous work Historians in Medieval India, has opined that Fatahi Jahandari stated the views of Balban on the theory of kingship even more conspicuously. Muzaffar Alam stated that the expansion of Islam brought not just new land and peoples within the ambit of power, but also a variety of new social and political ideas. Some significant change came into being in the theocratic foundation of early political Islam and guideline for the manner in which the Sultan should rule. Balban, through his theory of kingship, tried to prove that he had not taken the throne by the poisoned cup or by the dagger of the murderer. To quote Khalik Ahmed Nizami, the great historian, I am just keeping within quotation, by digging into the ears of his maliks and amirs, most of whom were the condemned colleagues, again and again, that kingship was something divinely ordained. He wanted to wash off the stigma of being a regicide and impress upon their minds that it was the divine will that had bring him to the throne, that had brought him to the throne, and not the poisoned cup and the assassin's dagger. Now we are going to learn about the Balban's theory of kingship, how the concept of theory of kingship that he manifested or he tried to implement in the Indian polity. So we will discuss about what were the main agenda, and then we will go to discuss how he has implemented those ideas in practice. Balban was an ideal ruler according to the standards of the age. Stanley Lenpool, another historian, he observed no one understood better than Balban the condition of kingship in India. His Wasa to his son, Prince Muhammad, reveals his opinion about the theory of kingship. According to Balban himself, kingship is the nice regency of God on earth, which says that niyabate kuldai, and in dignity it is next only to prophethood. So thereby he has attained some kind of divinity within himself. The king is the shadow of God on earth. We quote this phrase, shadow of God on earth, that is Jile Illahi, and his heart is the respiratory of divine guidance and radiance. According to Irfan Habib and other historians, actual implication of this concept was that the source of king's power lay primarily with the nobles of the people, but not with the people, but with the God only. So this was a subtle religious device just to sanctify the implication of his despotic authority. Thus the crown was placed on earth higher and dignified pedestal, and all possibilities of conflicts and contest with the nobility were eradicated. He was not answerable to anybody for the discharge of his function as Sultan, and therefore he tried to enhance the power and prestige of the crown. The theory of kingship that was actually propounded by Balban led to the adoption of the policy of blood and iron. Later on in our discourse, we will discuss that what was actually the policy of blood and iron. Balban was convinced that the only way to face the internal and external dangers was to increase the power and prestige of the Sultan. Sword, quote unquote, was the chief weapon of Balban to achieve his objectives. He used this weapon with a great vengeance against his rivals, rebels, robbers, thieves, and the invaders. By following this policy, he wanted to create terror in the minds of the people that whosoever will try to challenge the authority of the Sultan, he would not be spared. So now, in a nutshell, we are just going to look at what are the theory of kingship, what are the basic fundamentals of the kingship that was based, Balban was based on. And first of all, we should say that it is the divine right of kings. Balban said that the king was the representative of God on the earth and kingship was a divine institution. So he declared this to make the nobles believe that he got the crown or the kingship not through their mercy but by the mercy of God. Secondly, it is a royal descent. Balban realized that people at that time believed that it was only the prerogative of the ancient royal families to rule and exercise power. He declared that he was the descendant of the legendary Turkish warrior Afrasiab, and that circumstances only had made him a slave. He himself said to his son Bughra Khan that kingship is the embodiment of despotism, which itself expressed that he was a king and he was a despot. He believed that it is the king's superhuman awe and status which can ensure people's obedience. Then we may look at the difference, word of difference between descendants of noble lineage and the commoners. What did Balban understand or what he tried to make understand people, that there are differences between the descendants of noble lineage and with the commoners. Historian Ziauddin Barani has remarked in this context, whenever Balban saw a man of low birth, his eyes started burning with rage and anger, and his hands reached his sword to murder him. And this view seems to be on the extreme side. However, this much is believable, that because of this outlook of Balban, he dismissed officials not born of noble families from all important posts in his administration. Now we can see there is another part of kingship which is called recognition of tripartite relationship by the historians, because Balban emphasized the relationship between God and the Sultan, Sultan and the people, and the God and the people. He considered himself the representative of God on the earth to look after the welfare of the people who created by God. Accordingly, he emphasized that treasury should be used for the benefit of his subjects. Likewise, the king should impartial in dispensing justice. After discussing all these basic fundamental ideas and concept of the theory of kingship, we can go further that how he has implemented those ideas or conception of kingship which he believed very strongly. And in a way, to start with, we can first mention about the prerogative that any of the kings of the Islamic kingdom used to implement when they first came in the power. As we know, in the Islamic canonical text, there are two prerogatives of any monarch after the conquest of any new land or a region. First, to read khutbah in his own name in the Friday prayer, and secondly, to struck coins in his own name to express his political authority. In case of Balban, we may refer that Balban always, very often, he referred to the need of obtaining sanction also from the Khalifa of Baghdad as the supreme head of the Muslim political authority. And that is why the name of the deceased Khalifa al-Mustasim was inscribed on the riverside of his coins, and it was read during the khutbah also. Why we say that deceased Khalifa, the al-Mustasim died in 1252, but when Balban is striking his coins much after 1252, he was still using the name of the already deceased Khalifa al-Mustasim, just to show his allegiance or kind of sanction from the supreme authority of the Islamic world. Next, we can have a look of the administrative measures. What kind of administrative measures that Balban did take when in the process of implementing this kingship theory, and it's a kind of very firm and strong administrative system that he wanted to introduce in India, and also introduce in medieval India, and he has a kind of intention to recover the situation of the then Mamluk rulers or the other dynasties who ruled India for a who were the newcomer in India, and tried to maintain their sovereignty for next 100 years. So if Balban looked upon the administration of justice as one of the foremost duties of a king, and this was one of the redeeming features of his despotic government, and won him the affection and loyalty of the common people. His intelligence officers kept him fully informed about the activities of the imperial officers in different parts of the empire. Any lapse on the part of the Parids was made with severe punitive measure. However, in disputes concerning individual, Balban discarded all principles concerning justice and fair conduct. This is especially true in cases of individual versus the state, or where his own personal and dynastic interests were involved. In such cases, he neither cared for justice nor for fair play, and expressed complete disregard for the Shariat. Balban also believed in the concept of centralized political authority. Most official appointments were made directly by him, or were made subject to his approval. Without his approval, no one can be recruited in any kind of post in his administration. Provincial governors had to submit periodical status reports to him. A very efficient audit system controlled the decision-making powers of the governor, particularly when it came to fiscal matters. Balban also severely curtailed military and financial powers of the wazir. So all these kind of measures were taken to keep a very good control over the entire administrative system, be it the political affair, be it military affair, financial affair, or be it any kind of administration and recruitment everywhere. So after that, we can have a look of another measures that he has taken or implemented. It was the rich treasury that Balban considered to be like a healthy heart, a full treasury, a rich treasury. To keep the treasury full, he was of the view that only half the revenue extracted should be used for state expenses, while the remaining half could well be kept as backup. In fact, by doing so, Balban also introduced a kind of change in attitude of the emperor or the sultan towards his nobles, towards the common people, and towards the other persons in his administration as well as in his kingdom. In order to prove his claim of divine origin, he made a complete change in his dress, behavior, and manner. Not only that, declaring himself a descendant of Afrasiab dynasty, he gave up drinking, cut off from the jovial company of his courtiers, maintained aloofness, and stopped meeting the common people. Balban did not agree to meet a rich merchant of Delhi who was prepared to hand over all of his property in return for an interview with the Sultan. So he had a feeling of hatred for the low-born people that we have already mentioned, and according to Barani, once he said, "My veins began to rage when I behold a low-born person." Balban always maintained an external dignity. He never expressed unusual joy or sorrow in public. To the extent we may mention about one incident, it is said that when the news of the death of his eldest son Muhammad was conveyed to him, he remained unmoved and carried on the administrative activities in his private apartment. After coming back to his private apartment, though he wept bitterly. So he never used to lose his composure in public. He was also in favor of autocratic power. He displayed his autocratic power and grandeur always. He framed certain rules for the court behavior and forced the courtiers to act accordingly. He himself strictly followed these rules in his own life. His darbar was famous for its pomp and show. It was based on Persian model, and many ceremonies and festivals of Persian style were celebrated in his kingdom. The festival of Nowruz was one of the most important and renowned among them. He also adopted several customs to show his autocratic power. What are they? Balban introduced the practice of sajda or prostration, and paibos or kissing the feet of the Sultan, in which the people were required to kneel down and touch the ground with their forehead in salutation to the king. Thus, he tried to impose the superiority over his subjects. He influenced Muhammad, his son, the elder son, that you should create such condition that no one equal of you thinks of invading your territory. He did not permit his courtiers to take their seats so long as he remained in the court. In order to make defense in the court, he has appointed some guards. They were fearsome and tall, who were to stand round the king's person and with naked swords always in their hands. Whenever king used to go outside the palace, his bodyguards marched with him with naked swords and shouting Bismillah. According to Barani, Balban's concept of kingship becomes clearer when his notion about the essentials of kingship is discussed. According to him, the three main aspects of kingship were: first, the army; second, the treasury; and the nobility. Balban realized that the stability and permanence of the government depended upon a well-disciplined and well-equipped army. Therefore, he expended much effort on reviving an army which had been almost come to pulverized during the reign of Iltutmish. The most important thing of his administration and as well as of the kingship theory was having a strong army. He increased the numerical strength of the forces and appointed several thousands royal and experienced officers in the central contingents of his army. Salary enhancement was one among the many measures designed for keeping the armed forces happy and satisfied. To keep the army vigilant and active, he emphasized the need of frequent military conquests and engagements. He was of the view that the objective of all campaigns needed to be kept closely guarded. He would divulge his aims and objectives to the important Maliks only one night before a march, so that no one would be able to estimate what he is planning regarding a forthcoming march. Thus, his army, which was also referred to as the Qazi-e-Lashkar, was well balanced, and he appointed men of integrity, honesty and devotion. Now, after this discussion on army, we should reiterate that policy of blood and iron, which we have already mentioned once in the beginning of our discourse. And what was that policy of blood of iron? It was strong and absolute monarch who is exposed to follow a strict policy in dealing with his enemies. And Balban accordingly adopted this policy only. And he also taken some kind of measure to protect the kingdom from the foreign invaders. The strength of a despotic ruler is also can be measured by his ability that how much he can protect his subjects from the external danger. Balban in this regard took very effective steps. He strongly defended the Mongol invasion, and the rebellion of the Bengal was also been suppressed. So sometimes Balban was, we can say that he was fully convinced that this glory of kingship was possible only by following the Persian traditions, which was absolutely not, with which the people of India were absolutely not conversed with. So very carefully he followed these traditions in his personal and public life. He named his grandsons on the pattern of Persian kings. He introduced several Persian etiquettes in his court. He also tried to maintain a typical attitude towards his nobles. In this regard, K.A. Nizami, he mentioned that Balban was fully aware of both the strengths as well as the weakness of Turkish nobles. Therefore, the strengths lay in the support of this class, but he had to guard against three things: the likelihood of a tussle between the crown and the nobility, unrest between his son and the Turkish nobles, and monopolization of power by the Turkish nobles in the frontier area. Nizami has also mentioned that Balban was anxious to secure his personal interest. Therefore, he completely ignored the interest of the Turkish nobles and ruthlessly suppressed them. He believed that kingship knows no kinship. Balban's consolidation program did ensure the continuance of the Delhi Sultanate, but his attitude towards the Turkish nobility crippled it and reduced its lifespan. Now we have already discussed much about Balban's idea of kingship and how he has implemented and tried to implement very successfully that kingship, Iranian theory of kingship in India. Now we can have a very quick look what are the kind of impact or the achievements of Balban. His theory of kingship, coupled with his policy of blood and iron, paid him good dividends. He enhanced the prestige of the Sultan, he crushed the powers of his opponents, he brought about peace and order, he saved the country from the invasions of the Mongols. So, to summarize the above discussion, which we have done as the first module on the Delhi Sultanate period on the theory of kingship, we may now have a look at the whole thing at a glance. Balban's conception of kingship was similar to that of the theory of divine rights, right of kings. He cast a kind of halo of superiority around the monarchy. He felt that he would be respected and feared more if the royal title was in line with the religious beliefs of the Muslims. Balban expounded this view on monarchy to his son Bughra Khan in his own words, uh, quote with, "The heart of the king is a special repository of the God's favor, and in this he has no equal among mankind." Unquote. All the nuances of Balban's theory of kingship is known to us from Barani's work, that is Ziauddin Barani's work. According to Peter Hardy, Barani sought to reflect an ideal temporal order in which the world would be governed by a perfect sultan, should be assisted in his endeavors by a fleet of scholarly governors, where every decision would be made by the sultan himself, would be understood not in the context of history but in terms of province. Peter Jackson also corroborates Peter Hardy's views. He writes that the views of the historian Barani may reveal more what was expected of a ruler than about a ruler's actual conduct. So it can be said undoubtedly that Balban was one of the greatest sultans of Delhi. He, to his credit, guided the destinies of the Sultanate for a long period of 40 years. First 20 years as a prime minister and the second 20 years as a sultan. By ascending the throne at a time of confusion and crisis, he did everything right and appropriate for the restoration of the crown, prestige, and good governance of the state. By following the divine right theory of kingship, he maintained a great distance from the common people. He set up a magnificent court and displayed his power and authority with kingly dignity. He did everything to strike fear in the heart of the people and officers in the administration. Thus he could restore the status and prestige of the Sultan. Actually, Ghiyasuddin Balban was very successful in destroying the power and influence of Corps of 40, which was the greatest obstruction in the path of royal despotism. He abolished those Corps of 40. He even did not mind to inflict severe exemplary punishments to them for their slight offense and mistakes. Further, by organizing an efficient espionage system, he was successful in establishing law and order in the country. He kept the nobles under control and strengthened the central government. He was also a good administration and had a strong sense of justice. Peace, protection, and consolidation of the empire were the prime objectives of his administration. And according to Ishwari Prasad, another famous historian of this period, Balban was a great warrior, ruler, and statesman who saved the infant Muslim state from extinction at a very critical time. Balban will ever remain a great figure in medieval Indian history. So now whatever have been discussed in this discourse, I'd like to request you that if you need to further study and further references, you may please go and check to the e-text which is being served on the website, and you will get a detailed bibliography to make your understanding better on this part of this theory of kingship of Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban. Thank you very much.